So at the end of last year, there were several important amendments made to the Financial Intelligence Centre Act, otherwise known as FICA. And FICA was actually amended by this General Laws Amendment Act that sought to amend 5 pieces of legislation, including the Trust Property Control Act and the Companies Act as well, all with the aim of avoiding potential grey listing for South Africa. So some of the more important amendments, and what we'll talk about today, is those in terms of political exposure and prominent and influential persons. So essentially there were 2 acronyms previously, a DPIP and an FPPO. We'll start with DPIP, so that was a domestic prominent and influential person. That has now been amended to rather refer to the political exposure element to a DPEP, a domestic politically exposed person. So these are individuals who have been entrusted by South Africa with a prominent or public function. So for example, government ministers, members of the judiciary, to traditional leaders based in South Africa, executive mayors, or municipal managers, for example. Although the acronym has changed, the time period within which would satisfy the requirements of the definition of a DPEP have also changed. So in the past with a DPIP, it used to be those individuals who in the previous 12 months have held one of those positions that I've mentioned, or in an acting position for a period exceeding 6 months. They have now actually taken away both of those time periods, and it's if you've held a position of a DPEP for a period of longer than 6 months, then you'll be considered a DPEP. So it's accordingly broadened the amount of individuals that will fall under the scope of Schedule 3A, which deals with DPEPs. Then in terms of Schedule 3B to the FICA, which deals with FPPOs, which was their previous name, it's now FPEPs. So that's a foreign politically exposed person. These are individuals who have been entrusted by a foreign country with a prominent or public function. So think, for example, of heads of states of foreign countries, for example, Joe Biden, and then also, for example, members of a foreign royal family, think Prince William, for instance. So the time periods that actually define these FPEPs have also changed. So it used to be occupying that position within the previous 12 months. They've now actually removed that to really broaden the scope of the more individuals to actually fit into those prominent public functions. So what they've also done in terms of the legislation, they've separated political exposure from prominent and influential persons. So remember I said 3A was referring to DPEPs, 3B is FPEPs, and then they've created a new section 3C, which deals essentially with PIPs, or prominent and influential persons. So essentially these are individuals who have occupied a position within the past 12 months for example, it's generally referred to as the C-suite of a company. So it could be the CEO, the CFO, the chairperson of the board of directors, or audit committee, for example, that actually provide the products and services to organs of state. So just think, for example, of government tenders and government contracts. So these are individuals who essentially will need to be screened, which DocFox does on a nightly basis. What's really great about the DocFox system is that we have a whole database of these domestic politically exposed persons. So you no longer really have to rely on unreliable client disclosures or kind of waste time manually researching each individual, politically exposed client. So I really hope you enjoyed this information session on just the amendments to FICA. Please scan the QR code or click on the link in the description to read further about these changes.